and welcome to the Happy Hour. My name is Jamie Ivey, and I am your host. And each week I invite a girlfriend to join me on the show, and we chat about the big things in life, the little things in life, and everything in between. Today's show is a little different than a normal show. With Mother's Day coming, I wanted to do a show honoring moms, but not just the typical mom that we see in greeting cards and on commercials. When thinking through all the different kinds of mamas out there, I came up with no less than 20 different types of moms that I wanted to chat with. Single moms, divorced and remarried moms, stepmoms, moms through adoption, foster moms, first moms. Literally, the list went on and on and on. And finally, Knox, who's the mastermind behind making this show sound so good, firmly told me to pick 4 and go with it. So I did. I picked 4 moms to talk to today about what motherhood is like for them. We talk about the challenges that they incur, the misconceptions that they're trying to dissolve, what's different about this part of mothering than they imagined, plus much more. Please hear me on this. All of you moms out there, whether you are represented today or not, you are doing such an amazing and important job, and you should feel such pride on your special day this coming weekend. Before we get going, I want to thank one of the sponsors for this show, and that is Hooray Mail. Hooray Mail is a subscription snail mail delivered twice per month for kids ages 2 to 6. In each brightly colored envelope, they will find a personalized card and a fun activity. These activities are super simple, and they can be done in like 5 minutes using supplies you already have around your home. Thank you for that, like crayons and scissors. Hooray Mail is perfect for working moms, proud grandmamas, aunts and uncles, anyone that wants to give the kids that mean something the most to them, something meaningful and a lasting gift that delivers joy and love one mailbox at a time. My kids love getting mail. This is such a great gift. Hooray Mail has a coupon code for all you Happy Hour listeners. It's Happy Hour, and you can get 50% off your first month of Hooray Mail. That's 2 snail mail cards a month. Use the code Happy Hour. Guys, before we get going talking to these 4 fabulous moms, I want to make sure that you all subscribe to the podcast. If you aren't yet, or if you aren't sure, just go to jamieivey.com/iTunes and click subscribe. Doing that ensures that you don't miss any new episodes. So if you could take a minute to do that, I'd be super grateful. And you're going to appreciate it as well, because every Wednesday and every other Friday, a new show is just going to pop up when you listen to podcasts. The first mama I talked to today is my friend Wynn Elder. Wynn's been on the show before. She was actually episode number 4. So you can go back and check out our first conversation, one of the very first conversations on the Happy Hour. Wynn and her husband live in Bryan, Texas, and they have 2 children. Today, we have a very open conversation about her struggle with infertility over the past 7 years. The journey that she's been on has been a hard one, but she's looking for ways to have joy in the midst of it. She shares the hard stuff about her journey, plus ways that you and I can love those around us that are also struggling with infertility. Hey, Wynn, thanks for coming on the Happy Hour with me.
Hey, Jamie. Thanks for having me back.
Happy Mother's Day, almost.
You too.
Thank you. Yeah, you were, do you know what number you were on the Happy Hour? 5, 4.
Number 4.
4.
I think 4.
Yeah, so you were on a long time ago when I just started. And we had such a fun time chatting. And so thanks for coming back again.
We did.
Wynn is a mom and a wife, and you have 2 kids, and you sell Noonday, and you have done photography. Am I right?
Yeah.
And what else do you do?
All the things.
All the things.
My favorite thing right now is I have a space in our cute little historic downtown called The Haven. And it's sort of like a fun little gathering place where we have events and creative people work down there, and it's awesome.
It sounds amazing. Like, I want to be at The Haven right now is what it sounds like.
Yeah. You need to come visit.
Yes, I am. So I asked you to come on today because I think that I mentioned to you a couple months ago about wanting to actually have a conversation about this around Mother's Day, because I know that Mother's Day it's a great holiday. Like, we get to celebrate our moms, we get to like thank our moms. To me, it's kind of like Valentine's Day. Like, it's not just a day reserved aside for me to value my mom or my kids to value me. But I know that this day can also be really hard for some people. And so it really got my wheels thinking, and that's why I wanted to do this little interview with a couple different moms, just because to talk about the difference that motherhood looks like. So you're a mom to 2 kids right now.
Yes.
But you've had a struggle and a hard time getting to be a mom. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. It's been about a 7-year journey when God put on our hearts for the first time that we we're ready to start a family. And you're ready and you think it's just going to happen the old fashioned way. And that's what happens, right? Like you're like, all right, I'm ready. And it's supposed to just happen. But 7 years later, we are still praying and waiting for a miracle biological baby. But we have our two kiddos that we adopted from Ethiopia 3.5 years ago. So they are my real children. I am their real mom, and I am a mom. But like I've heard so many people say before, adoption doesn't cure infertility. It's they're my children, and I'm their mom, and I love them. But I still have this deep desire in my heart to experience pregnancy and what it's like to carry a baby and give birth, and all the things that moms to little newborn babies do that I haven't gotten a chance to do.
I love that you said adoption doesn't cure that desire in your heart, because it did take the desire, like you are a mom, that desire has been fulfilled, but there's still more, and so I like that you said that, because I think some people can think, well, you're good now, right? Everything's okay. And you actually do a lot of like ministry towards moms that are going, or towards women who are going through this exact same thing. Why did you start that? How did that start? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. I just felt like God very clearly for the first year and a half, 2 years maybe, that we struggled with this, I spoke of it to hardly anybody. And then one day I just sort of felt like God say, I want you to share your journey while you're still in the middle of it. Not when you're on the other side necessarily, but while you're in the middle, in the thick of it. And so a few gals and I started almost 2 years ago a ministry called the Carry Camp. And it was just sort of born out of this need that we saw for so many women that are struggling with infertility, do it alone. And it can be such a shameful thing for many, just something that they think, well, nobody that I know has struggled with this, so I'm not going to talk about it. But the stats are 1 in 8 couples will struggle to get pregnant. And so there are so many people in this world who struggle with this, just maybe alone. So we started this ministry to really just bring together these women, for them to have a safe place to belong and to be known and to share in those struggles. And it's called the Carry Camp. Just sort of the picture of carrying each other's burdens.
Yeah. And
so we do. Yeah.
Well, go. Yeah. Tell us what you do. And then I have another question.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a retreat every year. This September 9th through 11th, we're having our second annual retreat outside of Nashville, where we'll gather an intimate between 20 and 30 women for the weekend to just be together and pray and laugh and have fun and cry and listen to teachings and share stories and have fun outdoors. We did it last year, and all the girls that were there, we have a private little support Facebook group that, we're all on there almost every week, just praying for each other and sharing the latest, whether it's fertility treatments or adoption placements or whatever. It's been really, really cool to be that support for each other.
So I have a question for you. I know that I'm assuming that, I'm going to just make an assumption here. If I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong. I'm assuming that Mother's Day probably has been harder in years past than it might be now. Is that a little bit true?
Yeah, definitely.
So go back to before you became a mom, and how was Mother's Day? Was it something that you like dreaded? Was it something that was hard to get through the day, or was it something that you really had strength to get through in knowing the season that we're in? What does that look like for you, or for someone who is actually struggling with infertility as well? How is Mother's Day hard, besides the obvious?
Well, if I'm honest, I'm not like super excited about it this year either. Not the day, but especially even thinking about, which is sad, going to church on Mother's Day Sunday, because I know we're doing baby dedication and they'll be doing all these special things for moms. And even though I am a mom, there's still this pain that day of, I have not birthed a child. There's still so much to this motherhood journey that I don't know. And I think that when I became a mom via adoption, I'm sort of getting off a little bit, but I thought like, okay, I'll be like in the real moms club. But there was still this sense for a long time, and I'm over it now, but there was a sense for a long time that I wasn't a real mom because I hadn't experienced a lot of the things that moms that have babies the traditional old-fashioned way do. And so I think Mother's Day is just hard because you feel so isolated. You can feel so isolated and lonely.
What are some things that either you did personally to help you in that time, or that people around you did that actually were a help?
I think even that day, just getting texts from friends that say, hey, I'm thinking about you today. Like, you don't even have to say much. I think the hardest thing. I think it's hard because people who haven't struggled with it don't know what to say. And I've
That's
had so
true.
many friends
Yeah.
say, like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of times, because people don't want to say the wrong thing, they just don't say anything. And that is worse, I think, than saying the wrong thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think as simple as, and I even do this every year on Mother's Day, I reach out to friends of mine who are still in this, I mean, I am too, still in the struggle of infertility, just to say, it doesn't have to be some big thing. Just, hey, I'm thinking about you today. I love you.
I remember just, and I think I might have said this on the show before, but just in a different kind of pain of when I was waiting for my kids to come home. Like it was really hard for me
Yeah.
to sit through baby
Yeah.
dedications because I was just
Yeah.
mad that they had their babies and mine weren't here. And
Yeah.
so I get that, I get that pain that might be going through. What do you think is some kind of misconception that people who have never walked through infertility might have about a woman or a couple who's struggling with that? What's a misconception that we might have that you kind of like to debunk?
Well, I think something that I think about a lot, and this actually just happened to me last night, so it's very fresh in my mind, but it's so hard when people don't want to tell you that they're pregnant
Mm,
and they feel bad, or you're the last one to know because they just didn't want to tell you because they didn't want you to be sad. And that breaks my heart because it is hard. Like I can understand, I can have compassion for you being like, she's a crazy lady. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And so I'm
mm-hmm.
just not going to say anything, but it's almost like it makes it worse because of course I'm overjoyed for you. Of course I'm excited. Now I might be sad for myself and that's my own thing. And I'm going to deal with that in my own way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's hard. But I also think as a woman who's struggling, you have to be willing to share with your people how they can love you and support you and best deal with you almost
Yeah.
in this season. And so, I mean, I've had friends now that before they announce to a big group that they're pregnant, they'll call me or come over to my house and tell me first. And that means so much. Not that I need to be the first to know, but that no, because ultimately, if someone announces they're pregnant, everyone's looking at the one who can't just to see what their reaction is. And that's so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think when I realized when I was Aunt Wen for so long that, yes, maybe I'm angry that you're pregnant and I'm not, and I don't understand, and I'm, can't be fully, oh, so excited for you. But that little fetus in your belly will turn into a toddler that's going to run around one day that I'm going to be in love with. And so
Yeah.
how can I not celebrate that life?
Yeah. How have you personally walked through this? Not just like how your friends encourage you, but what are some things that have gotten you through the past 7 years that you can, I mean, I've heard you say several times, like, I don't feel this way anymore, or I've gotten over that, or I'm working through that. What are some things that you can say, here's what used to really like get to me, and here's things that used to really bother me, but because of this, I'm on this side of on the road on that.
Well, I mean, I think it has gotten easier over the years for sure, but it hasn't gone away. I mean, there still are months that are super hard, but I think besides the obvious, just the growth that I've shown or that God has put in my heart
Mm-hmm.
and the intimacy that I have with Him that I wouldn't have had any other way, that makes me thankful for this
Mm-hmm.
journey and see it. And now every day I'm not like, thank you, God, for infertility,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the days I really can, and I can look and I can see and I can be grateful for this hardship that has
Yeah.
been such a blessing. But a lot of it has just been the community that I've surrounded myself with. And I mean, the girls I started the carry camp with have been a huge part of that. Just to have people who, when you send out a text like, I'm so mad, I started my period today, they're not going to be like, oh, but God's plan is
Mm-hmm.
so wonderful. They're going to be
Mm-hmm.
like, man, that sucks. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. You pour yourself a glass of wine and, whatever, just to be real. And you need that. You need people that we know the truth. And there
Mm-hmm.
are times definitely when we need to hear the truth, but there are times when we just need someone to commiserate with us and say, man, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I always tell my girlfriends like when I'm suffering through something, I'm like, I need 3 days, and then I want the truth just thrown at me. But at first, I just want a little
Right.
softness. I just want a little like
Yes.
understanding, and then you can
Yes.
bring it. I
Right.
really like what you just said just a few minutes ago. Is that you said that the pain hasn't gone away, but you can look at the pain and you can be thankful for it because of what it's done between you and God. And I think that
Yeah.
is any kind of like hardship that we may have. I mean, this show's all about motherhood,
Yes.
but anything that we've been through, anything that I've been through, I can think the pain is still there, but what it's done for me, it's made me need Him more. It's made me love Him more. It's made me draw closer to Him. And so I think that's when we can look at suffering and thank him for it. So I loved when you just said
Yeah.
that. What is your
Yeah.
encouragement to women who are listening that they haven't told anybody and they're walking through
Yeah.
this with just them and their husband and they feel so alone? What's your encouragement to them?
Oh, man, that's so hard. Well, come visit us on the Carry Camp.
Yeah.
And it really is. I mean, even if you just find the strength to open up to one person, I mean, it's just so, so hard to walk that alone and have nobody. I feel like there's such freedom when we bring things from the darkness into the light, and infertility is nothing to be ashamed of. It's not your fault. It is just a part of your story. And, maybe for a long time you won't see that as a blessing, but hopefully one day you will, and your hope will be sustained and God will just show up and be so, so near. But really just finding that community, even if it's just one or two people to walk with you that you can be honest with, that you could say, hey, this is how you could best love me. It hurts when you say this. This is how I feel every month when I start my period. That really will make so much difference just to not be alone.
And what about for us that are on the flip side? People are listening that haven't necessarily, this has not been a part of their story. What's your advice to them when a girlfriend comes to them and shares this with them?
Right. I mean, I think it's just being how you would be a friend if there was something else, like just listening to them, seeing them, understanding them, not trying to fix them, not trying to say, well, have you done this or have you done this or you should just do this, but just really being there and listening and wanting to understand and just being present.
Yeah, I love that. I love just the way that you're encouraging women to do that. I'm going to put some links up for the Carry Camp. So I'll be sure everyone can know about that as well. Because I'm a big fan of people getting together and loving on each other and pointing people to the truth, especially people that understand what you're going through. So that is great. Okay, last question. You and I are both moms through adoption, and so a lot of times you already cleared it up that these are your real kids. A lot of times we are asked those questions, and I always say, "Well, yeah. I mean, what am I, fake? Of course I'm their real mom. Yes." And we've been like role playing with our kids, like having them because they get these questions at school a lot, and they sometimes don't know the language for it. So anyhow, what are some little like maybe things that people might say, not trying to be mean, but just because they don't know and you can help us all out? What are some things that people might say to someone who's struggling with this that might not be appropriate or kind?
Well, I hate the word infertile because infertile seems like that's it. There's no hope. You're done. You are infertile. Now, while it might be a medical term, it is not a term that you should use to women. I mean, I think it's just struggling with infertility is, more of the right. But I mean, I think that's a good question. I think too, everybody has an idea. Everybody, when people say, well, you should just adopt or you're going to adopt
and then you're going to get pregnant.
Like all those things. Yeah. Those are just not true. And I think, there's so much, even just the promise of like, you will get pregnant one day. It's like, well, really?
No, you don't know that. Like, right. Exactly.
I hope I do. And I would love for you to believe with me and to hold my arms up when I can't hold them up myself. But you're not God. So you don't really know if I will eventually get pregnant or not. Yeah. And so those things are,
I think those are hard too, because people that say them, and we've probably all been guilty of doing that, man. I probably put my foot in my mouth so many times until I actually, am on the other side of the situation. But I think people are like, I just want to encourage you. And the best thing I can say is like, oh, I had a cousin and as soon as she adopted, she got pregnant, and so that is that's a story, and that happened. But it is not the reality. And so I think that whenever we're trying to encourage someone, unless it is like truth that we can stand on to be truth, then you might not want to say it. Yeah.
It's well-meaning, but
so well-meaning. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Wen, thank you and your dogs. I loved hearing your little peppers back there talking to us. No worries. Real life. # real life. Thanks for coming on today and just talking about
Thank you so
your
much.
struggle. I'm so proud of you for sharing it. I'm so proud of you for loving women in the midst of it. So that's a special thing to be able to do. Thank you. Guys, I loved Wen's words of wisdom for all of us women, whether we are walking this road or we have friends that are. If you want more information about the Carry Camp, I'm going to have all of that on my show notes. Go to jamieivey.com. Next up is my friend Diane Cotton, who's the mom to 3 beautiful children between the ages of 28 and 24. Diane and her husband live here in Austin, and they both work at the Austin Stone Community Church. I am a huge fan of this woman, and when you listen to the wisdom that she just poured out for you and I, I think you're going to be her fan as well. If you're a mama whose kids have all left the nest, this is for you. This will encourage you. And if you are a mama that is diligently mothering little ones, you're going to be inspired as much as I was. Hey Diane, I am so glad that you are here with me. Diane is a friend of mine and just a wonderful all-around person that we get to serve at our church together. And so, Diane, welcome to the happy hour.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I'm really glad to be on the happy hour with you.
So much fun. Okay, so Diane and her husband Larry, y'all have 3 children. Tell us about your kids real quick.
Okay, we have 3 kids, yes. They are grown. We have twin boys, Kobe and Corey, who are 28. And then I have a daughter who is 24, and my sons live in Dallas, and my daughter lives here in Austin with us.
Okay, so
not
here,
with us,
but in the same city, yeah. So you have no kids at home anymore. You've been a mom for 28 years. Go back to like that first, after Catherine was gone, like that first time that you and Larry are like, we're alone here. How is that motherhood? How was that transition?
Yeah, I think, you it's coming, and that senior year is the hardest because it's all these last things. You're doing this for the last time and this for the last time, and there's a lot of just anxiety about that. But when the time comes, I think you realize that your marriage, how important your marriage is, and how all the time you've spent in your marriage building that. You can't really do that when they leave. It's important that you do it while your children are home. It's really easy to put your children first and kind of build your life around your kids. And then when they're gone, you realize, a lot of your identity was caught up in your children. And so I think just the realization of how important your marriage is, and then the realization that your identity doesn't come from your children. It comes from Jesus, who never leaves and never changes. So those are 2 of the things that I really faced when the last one left.
That's really good. And I always am like thinking about that and doing that. I'm 10 years out from being an empty nester, and Aaron and I always joke that those might be the best days of our life. We love our kids dearly, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
But what does it look like to parent 28-year-old boys, one about to be married soon, and then a 24-year-old daughter who have their careers, they have their life, they have their thing? Did you anticipate mothering, how did you, I don't even know what kind of thing I want to know about that, but it's just like when you think about mothering adult children, is it different than you thought it would be? Is it the same? What does it feel like to mother children that are grown and don't really need you that much anymore?
Yeah, I think that as a parent, you go through different stages with your children. When they're little, you're kind of in the command stage. You're just telling them exactly what to do. And then as they get older, you're allowing them more freedom to make their own decisions. And you're trying to take them from complete dependence on you to independence. And so the last stage is probably one of the hardest, because it's when you have to let go and you really become kind of a consultant to them. You've spent your whole life mothering them and being over them and making sure they're safe and all those things, and making wise decisions. And when you send them off, you really have to let them go. And that's definitely been the hardest stage for me. But it's so awesome to see them to go out as independent adults. And so as a mother and a parent, you're really, your role is to be a consultant, to say, hey, let me know how I can help. You let me know how I can help. I'm available. I can't tell you what to do anymore, but I'm always available. And it's one of the great things about having a good relationship with your children. They still call us. We're still good friends. And so we want to help them in any way we can.
That's awesome. When I think about everything you're saying, I think I'm going to guess that most of my listeners are probably younger than you are and still have kids at home. So when you're talking to me, who, I'm 6 years away from my first one leaving, 10 years from the last one, I mean, those years go quickly. What's an advice that you would give to me as a mom that's not where you are yet, but I'm going to be there in 10 years?
I think it's really important for you to begin to ask God, how do you want to use my life for you? And we spend so much of our time pouring into our children, and like I said, they can become our whole world. And just looking ahead that they're going to be leaving, that is the role that you have right now, and it is your most important role. But someday they will be leaving, and you don't want them to leave and then you go, whoa, I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't know how God has gifted me or how He wants to use me. And so I would say begin to just be asking God, what does He want to do with your life? How does He want to use you, even as they're home? Because you want them to see that you're being used for Him, that your life is first of all God's, and that it's, and then your marriage and then your children, but not that your whole world revolves around them.
That's good. How is mothering older kids different than you thought it was going to be?
I think it's interesting how they do still call us and look to us, and they still need us in a different way, but they need that relationship. We're like that, kind of like that anchor, and they come back to us and then they go back out. And I didn't anticipate that. When they leave, you just feel like, oh, they're gone.
Yeah.
I'll never see them again. And it hasn't been like that. It's been such a joy to watch them walk with Jesus and to watch them learn and grow and see God working in their life, and also that we get to be a part of that still.
Well, us Ivies are big fans of the cotton, so we value anything you say. I'm taking big time notes. So, Diane, I really appreciate you talking about motherhood with me, and because it's my show and I get to do whatever I want to do, I want you to tell everyone you have 3 kids that are doing amazing things in their worlds and in their talents and affecting people around them. Just tell everyone what your kids are doing real quick.
Okay, my sons, Kobe and Corey, are part of the Dude Perfect team. They just have a YouTube channel, and they just began a TV show, and they are doing what they did as children. They love to come up with games, and that was their best thing, and I get to see God use them in the way that He's made them. It's just so fun to see God use your children in the ways that you even knew they were when they were young. And then my daughter, Catherine, has a business called Marry Me in Spring, and she is an illustrator, and when she was young, she would draw on napkins and church bulletins, and everywhere we were, she would be drawing. And just to see God use that gift that He gave her as a young child, see Him use that is so awesome, to see them grow up and become what God has called them to be, even as a young child.
I love that. I have no idea why, but I'm crying. Like, all you're doing is talking about the amazing thing your kids are doing, but it's made me sit here and think, like, man, one day I'm going to look back and see, like, the gifts that God's given my kids, and I don't know why I'm crying.
Well, it's amazing. It is one of the greatest joys to see God shape your children and then use them. It says there's no greater joy than to see your children walking in the truth. And it is the greatest joy. Yeah. It's the greatest joy of our lives, and they are our most important disciples. And your children are your most precious disciples. And every minute that you pour into their lives is worth it.
Well, Diane, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you for being steps in front of some of us. And there's people that are listening that are just nodding along. They're in the same phase as you. And so thanks for just opening up your heart and sharing your wisdom and your advice. And happy Mother's Day to you.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I've loved being a part of your show.
I could literally listen to Diane talk all day long. And you heard that I got emotional thinking about the day when my kids are on their own and loving God and what that might feel like. Diane is such an encourager to women and is someone that I can willingly look to for all kinds of great advice and mothering. All right, guys, before we get to our next 2 moms, I want to thank another sponsor for our show, and that's Prep Dish. Prep Dish is a healthy, subscription-based meal planning service. So every week, you're going to receive an email that contains a grocery shopping list, plus instructions for prepping your meals ahead of time. So you head to the grocery store, you buy everything on your list, and then you come home and you spend about 2 to 3 hours prepping all of your meals. And then, guys, you have meals ready for the rest of the week. I cannot even tell you what a blessing this is to mamas, that the answer for what's to dinner is already in your fridge. Allison, the chef over at Prep Dish, she is offering all listeners of the Happy Hour a special rate of $4 for the first month. That's $1 per weekly meal plan. Go to prepdish.com/happy hour and use the code happy hour for this great deal from Prep Dish. Next up is my friend Alicia Gordon. Alicia and I met last year when we both traveled to Uganda together with Soul Hope. Alicia is a single mom to her daughter Ashley, and they live in the Atlanta area. Alicia has a passion for seeing single moms thrive, and she's out to change the narrative of how the world looks at single moms. Alicia, thanks for joining me on the Happy Hour.
Of course, Jamie. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad. Alicia and I met last year. We both got on a plane and flew across the world to Uganda together.
Yes, we did. Fun times.
Was that your first time to anywhere in the continent of Africa?
It was my
Mine
very
too.
first.
Man, that was fun.
It was.
And then we
Shout
ended
out to Soul Hope.
There you go. We went with Soul Hope, and it was a lot of fun. And that's when I met you, and that's when I thought I really like this person, and I want to continue to know you. And so I've just loved following your stuff. But what I asked you to come on today is because you are a single mom.
I am.
And how old? Tell us a little bit just about like what you do, how long you've been a mom, that kind of stuff.
Well, I am a mom to a 11-year-old daughter named Ashley. She is a ball of fun and really creative and super sweet. And so we've been living this life out together. I am a writer and blogger who writes about faith and culture and the intersections between those things. And I'm also a religious educator and preacher and pop culture enthusiast and all those fun things. So, you know, she and I live this life out together.
I love all of those things that you are. I need some of those in my life.
Yes.
I'm definitely not a pop culture person, but okay. So you and Ashley have been living this life for 11 years. What has been the hardest thing about single mom for you? Single motherhood?
You know, the hardest thing about single motherhood, surprisingly enough, is single motherhood really magnifies the things that I think average everyday moms experience. I think we all experience loneliness and, you know, inadequacies and, you know, all those types of very normal things. But I think what's been most challenging about being a single mom is that the singleness in the process really magnifies those things. And you really have to be super conscious and super aware about, you know, the ways in which you see the world and how your life experiences and choices have, you know, created this life for you. Mm-hmm. You know, there's one thing to have a desire for companionship or have a partner. And, you know, you're at the end of the day and you really want to just turn to somebody and just be like, oh, my gosh, you know, this is what happened to my day. It's a whole nother thing to not have that there and having to really turn inward and find, you know, other types of ways to really process your day and process your feelings. And so, you know, I found that different methods of spiritual care and journaling have been really helpful for that. But that's one of the challenges. It just exasperates and really magnifies the very normal everyday feelings that women and moms have.
That's a really good point. When you say it just makes what other women, other moms in different scenarios are dealing with, it just makes it a little bit larger, you know, mm-hmm. It just makes it a little bit bigger. What is one of the misconceptions that people think about single moms that you kind of want to say, hey, hold up, like that's not really true?
Right. So I talk about this all the time, and it's something I'm going to write about on my blog, maybe over the series of a few posts about changing the narrative of single motherhood. You know, the narrative often is that there's this woe is me, I'm poor and I'm pitiful, I may have made, you know, bad decisions or all these things. That is often the narrative that is painted, especially in society and the media. But what that narrative does is it does two things. One, it erases the story and narrative of women who are single moms by choice because they've adopted mm-hmm. or, you know, because this is my body and I can choose to have a baby if I damn well please. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or women who are widows or women whose husband or boyfriends or lovers died mm-hmm. in military or, you know, whatever, or, you know, serving their country. And so the narrative of single motherhood is often painted in this very negative, light that leaves out the variations of stories of single motherhood. So that's one thing. But I think the other thing that the misconception that people have about single moms is that beyond the fact that, this narrative of being poor and pitiful, single moms are resourceful and tenacious, and they are, we are the best managers of time and money and resources. If you want the United States to balance a budget, put a single mom in office, you know what I mean? Because that is a particular gift and skill that single parents have. And I always relate this to the widow in 1 Kings 4. She is the woman who husband died. Her husband owed these debts, and she had these 2 sons, and the debt collectors were saying, like, if you don't pay this debt, we're going to take your sons into slavery to pay the debt off. This prophet Elijah comes and tells her to do what? To collect all these canisters from your neighbors and from your friends and from people in community. The Lord blessed the canisters. She had the oil to sell in order to pay off her debt. And not only that, she had plenty of oil left over. And so here it is, this single mom, right, who was in this precarious situation, who didn't have enough money, didn't have enough resources, but because of people and community seeing that her need and meeting her need, she was able to be resourceful and create a life for herself that protected her and her children. And so I think God is trying to reframe and recalibrate these stories and the ways in which we understand single motherhood to really reframe this narrative, and that single moms are not always this woe is me, like I made this poor decision. These are women who are resourceful. These are women who have a heart for God, and God is in turn, really calling for a community to help position single moms to do what it is that God has called them to do.
That's really, really good. And it brings me to another question, another thought, is that what does it look like for the church, the people of God, to come around a single mom and help her out? What are some ways that you would encourage people who might not necessarily be single moms? They could be married with no kids, or college students, or whoever it is in the church. How can we come beside someone who's a single mom and help them out? What does that look like?
I think it looks like being intentional about, one, creating relationships with single moms that are not codependent. I think oftentimes my experiences have been when people want to meet, whatever immediate needs that Ashley and I may have. But oftentimes single moms are thinking and dreaming bigger than just the moment, bigger than just making sure that the rent is paid or that the lights are on or that there's food on the table. And so creating relationships with single moms that allow her to dream, that allow her to say, these are what my dreams are. This is how I envision my life to be. And there are churches and ministries and families who have the means to help her see those dreams become a reality, because that's what happened in the 1 Kings 4 text.
Yeah.
That community said, listen, there is somebody who there's an immediate need, but if we go above and beyond to help meet this need, she can sustain herself and create an enterprise for herself so that she no longer has to rely on community in these ways. And so I think the church and community could be really intentional about not only hearing the immediate needs of single moms, but really allowing her and creating space for her and her children to dream in ways so that we can take the resources that we have to create sustainable, long-term ways for her to live this life out and live the way God has called her to live it out.
I'm guessing that this has played true in your life. You've been a single mom for 11 years to Ashley, and you've put yourself through school and provided for her and worked. And how has that played out in your life? The whole thing we just talked about, the church stepping up. How have you seen that true for you?
The church, even the church that I go to now, the reason that I am able to preach and to lead worship and to, use my gifts as a religious educator and write faith-based curriculums, all that kind of stuff was the direct result of being in a church that says, you have these giftings and we're going to allow you to use these giftings. And we are going to honor the gift by hiring you and contracting you out, you know what I mean? And paying people for their gifts. And so I'm thankful for my church here in Atlanta that allowed and created the space for me to really work through those gifts and earn money doing that. And that was the same for my community and my family, my immediate family. If there was an opportunity for me to travel and use my gifts, my mom or my brother or my friends would step up and, watch Ashley. My community at Emory, when I was, working on my divinity degree, if I had class, there were people who allowed her to sit in their office, So, there's this common thread of my quote unquote successes are the direct result of community saying, we see that you have a gift and that we see that there are immediate needs. But if we dig beyond the immediate needs, we can really create space for you to have the life that you feel like you and Ashley should have. And so I attribute every success and every ability to do things that many single moms just don't have the resources or community to do, a direct result of having a church and a family and an immediate community that created the space for that.
That's wonderful. And so I want to hear, like, if someone's listening, they're a single mom, or I actually want you to give us two encouragements. And so, because I love, love, love the way that you are reframing what a single mom looks like, because I do think so many times our first thought of a single mom is just a woman who made a bad choice maybe. And so here she is with a single mom, but there are so many women who are single moms, not by any bad choice, by circumstances or by life or by choice. And so I want two encouragements from you. Number one, I want you to encourage that single mom that's listening. And number two, I want you to encourage those of us that know women who are parenting solo. And those two encouragements I want to hear from you.
So to the single mom who's listening, my number one encouragement for you is to never, ever feel guilty for pursuing your dreams, goals, and taking care of yourself. I think that moms in general have this guilt. Anytime we want to take 5 minutes to drink a glass of wine and not talk to our kids, there's often this guilt that comes with that. But I think that guilt is often exasperated because people have the expectation that you are supposed to be and do all things for your kids as a single mom. And I want to encourage you that it is okay to take care of yourself. It is okay to pursue your dreams. It is okay to tell your children, no, not right now, because mom is working on this dream. And don't make anybody, even family members, make you feel bad for making those decisions, because anybody who knows anything about family dynamics, when mama is happy, when mama is satisfied, when mama is, living a life that she feels like she is meant to live, children thrive, families thrive. And so don't let anybody tell you that you can't be the person you see in your head because you're a single mom. You can do that, and you can be that, and you do not have to feel bad for these things.
That's good.
For the people who know single moms and are in community with single moms, I encourage you to, one, be intentional about reframing and re-understanding the story of that single mom. Whether she became a single mom out of the issue of sexual assault or because she loved the wrong man or because she is a widow, whatever the story is, be intentional about finding out the threads of her story and finding out how her threads connect to the stories in your own life. I think the connection between stories, even when the dynamics are different, are what makes us create long-lasting relationships that can be helpful to not only challenging our own preconceived notions about what it means to be a single mom, but helping change the social dynamics of how we understand single motherhood, the ways in which we vote, the ways in which we understand theology and church community. There are many churches and social groups who say that single moms should not be able to stand in the pulpit and preach because of that sin that they're carrying around. And so we can begin to challenge and encourage people to think about single motherhood differently by creating intentional relationships through the stories and the commonalities of our stories. And so I just encourage people to begin to rethink about what it means to be a single mom, rethink about why women choose to enter into this life as single parents, and do whatever it is that you can to provide the resources to not only meet immediate needs, but to help dreams come true.
Thank you, Alicia. That was so good about us. I love the finding the common ties that bring you together, because I think that can be true of all kinds of relationships that you're looking to pursue, is to really look and say, hey, what do we have in common? What are some of the common ties that we have? And what is our faith? Maybe that's a common tie. And so thank you for coming on here and talking about single moms.
Of course, Jamie, anytime.
All right. Thanks, Alicia. Alicia has a great way of bringing out the realness in any situation. And I loved our conversation about something that sometimes people do not know how to address, is how to help single moms. She encouraged me to look around and see who around me is a single mom and how can I help them. Last but certainly not least is my friend Aki Slockers. Aki is a mama to 2 kids, and 2 years ago her son Kai lost his battle with cancer and passed away. Aki shares with me today about what Mother's Day feels like for her now, plus ways that those of us who aren't enduring this pain and suffering can encourage someone that might be. Okay, Aki, thank you for coming with me for this Mother's Day episode. I'm glad you're on the happy hour.
Thanks for having me.
Aki, I met you through my friend Amanda Brown, who has been on the show, and I think you and Amanda worked together. Is that how y'all met?
That is, and then I went to junior high and high school with her husband, so it's kind of crazy. Small world. It
Very
always
small
turns
world.
out to be.
I did not know that.
Yes.
And I think when I first heard of her talk about you was probably when she started telling us about her friend whose son was in the hospital with cancer diagnosis.
Mhm.
And so today we're talking obviously about motherhood, and I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to talk about what motherhood looks like for you in this unexpected, never thought life would turn out like this, because it was a little over 2 years ago that your son Kai passed away. And so I guess my first question is will you just give our listeners just a little snapshot into what your family walked through 2 years ago and the diagnosis that your son had?
Sure. So it was in the winter, probably December of 2013. And I had my daughter Maya. She was about 4 months old almost, and I'm a really terrible newborn mother. I'm like, get me through the first year, and I'll be okay, or I'll be better. And so, trying to juggle like figuring out how to have 2 kids, and Kai started having these weird symptoms. He would kind of throw up from time to time, and anyways, everyone had the stomach virus, so it's so hard to tell with little kids.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Eventually, it came to the point, which just really in January, so this is like middle December was the first time he ever showed a symptom. When we went to the doctor, and they were eventually like, you know what, let's go ahead and get some tests done. And so we got blood tests, great, no problems there, and then started complaining of headaches, and that's kind of weird for a little kid, but so we went and tried to have an MRI in February, and my little boy is a very stubborn fighter, and he kind of just fought off the medication that was supposed to sedate him, like a 2-year-old does. And so we rescheduled it again, and we were trying a different way, and he also fought that off. I remember him saying, "Kai, no sleep, Kai, no sleep."
Aww.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you kiddo." So that whole month of February was kind of a loss, and we finally ended up going and getting an MRI at the Children's Hospital, where they put you completely under. They don't like to do that first. And so we're kind of a sigh of relief to finally get it done. And, and then they call us back, and we see our pediatrician walk in the room, who is such a kind man. He's the one who came in to tell us they found a brain tumor. And so that was March 6th. And I even thinking about it now, I think I didn't understand what was going on. I mean, I didn't even really think about brain cancer as terrible as that is, but I mean, that's the truth. And I remember I had to ask them for a breast pump because I was totally nursing my daughter and didn't expect her to be to be there all day. And they were, I'm like, we're in the midst of all this craziness, and I'm like, excuse me, but I really need this. And
I need to relieve my boobies.
Yeah. But that's, being a mom, right? And so they admitted us that night, and we were supposed to wait till thought that was a Friday or Thursday, and we were supposed to wait till the Monday to have the surgery, but he took a turn for the worse, and they did a brain surgery that Saturday. They were able to remove a good portion of it, but he had tumors all the way down his spine, and they called it like sugar coating on the brain. So basically that was just it looked like someone had sprinkled powdered sugar all over his brain, but it was all tumors. So, and I don't know if this is too much detail, so I can stop. But after that, we were in the hospital, of course, after a major brain surgery, and we were waiting for the diagnosis. So a week later, they told us, and it was something called atypical teratoid rhabdoid tumor, ATRT. It's really rare. About 25 kids get it in the U.S. per year. It's super new. They don't know a lot about it, and it's super aggressive. It hits little kids under the age of 3 often. And the prognosis is so bad that they just asked us if we wanted to go home. And I said, sure, yes, absolutely. And I remember
this is within a week after that MRI?
Yes. So
Okay.
because they have to send it off to confirm it. They thought it was, yeah. So they have to send it off to a lab, I guess, to do all these different tests to make sure. Um, so, so we went home, and it was just really hard. It was so good to be home, though. I mean, you could just tell it was. Everyone just felt a little better being at home, but it's also hard because you're having to manage all these medications that taste terrible. Your kid's in pain. He couldn't really sleep very well. But we did have one beautiful afternoon one day, and he saw his little friends outside, and he didn't want to do anything, but he saw them, and he's like, I want to go. I want to go ride bikes. And so for this brief moment, it was just, he was himself, and it was awesome. And then the next day, a good friend of mine who's a nurse, she was over, and she's like, I just don't think he looks right. And so called the doctor and kind of said what was going on, and they said, yep, come on in. And he ended up having another emergency surgery. So that was really just like 8 or 9 days after we had that
the
MRI.
first one.
And then so we were admitted back to the hospital. That surgery didn't really we realized we needed more interventions. He had a third brain surgery, and then he died that Friday, March 21st. So in a span of us finding it, he died 2 weeks later.
With 3 surgeries and
3 surgeries, yeah.
Yeah. I imagine, I'll just make the, most obvious statement of the next 10 minutes is that these are the hardest 2 weeks probably you've ever walked through.
Yeah, it's for sure. In different ways, I guess there's been days afterwards that have been hard, but I think the harder part is like in those days afterwards, I know that my son isn't hurting anymore. But in those days, during those 2 weeks, you're a mom, your whole drive is to make it better and to take away the pain. And when you can't do that for your kid, I mean, it rips you apart, and you're just like, please God, give this to me, like take it away from him, give it to me. You don't, I mean, no one deserves this, but it's just when it's your own child, it's just like you will do everything, You're like, rip off my arm, do whatever.
Right.
Like, so.
Aki, a lot of us go into motherhood, and this is like a fear of ours, obviously. I'm sure that you'd thought about it before. But tell me, just verbalize, what is it actually when you look down and granted, you didn't have very much time to try to figure this out. I mean, unfortunately, 2 weeks isn't a long time, but now you're on the flip side, and Kai's been in heaven for 2 years. When you look back and you think, man, I just would have never thought this is what my motherhood would look like. How does that, verbally, how do you even express that? How do you even address the fact that this is just not what you planned?
I guess one thing to say is I really was one of those moms who didn't know what I was getting into with motherhood. So maybe that was a good thing, but I think my parents joked that I would have lots of dogs but no kids. So I didn't really know, but this obviously was not part of it, especially after having our second child. And Kai was like the sweetest big brother. He hated us after Maya was born, but oh my gosh, he loved his baby sister. He, with all of his heart, he gave her all of his most favorite toys when she came home. I mean, just the heart on this kid. But I think, though, it just made me realize that this isn't about me. And these kids are a gift and a blessing that I have so many days that I don't know to be entrusted with, not that I'm doing all of it, but God's equipping me. That's for sure. That's going back to me knowing nothing about having kids. Any moms or women who think they can't do it, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Right.
But just makes you realize every day is a gift, and how much the promise of what to come is just like the rock that we can hang on to every day. And when we mess up, and don't know the right thing to do with our kids, or we're so angry and we're like, I know, especially, I get these feelings where I'm like, I should not be angry at Maya because I get to love her and hold her today. And I don't get to do that with Kai, but I do, I'm human. So it's just, it's a stronger reminder of just grace and rest and just how much we need God to help us every day. And, but that's all but I see that as a hopeful thing, it's like, oh my gosh, we can totally rest. I don't get to be Kai's mom here on earth, but like God totally took care of him, and that's all I ever wanted to do, and he took care of him better than I could have ever done here on earth. And like that's huge. So I don't know, that may have gone.
No, that's really good. I think a lot of times when people are interacting with someone that has gone through something that they haven't and they don't understand. For example, I talked to a woman about struggling with infertility, and we talked about how some women just don't know what to say. What's your encouragement to anyone that's listening that is walking alongside someone who has lost a child? What is something that we can do for moms that are walking through that journey that you went through with Kai and that other people might go through? Who knows? People are listening. This could be part of their story and we just don't know yet. So what's your encouragement to not necessarily, and I want to ask you later about the mom walking through this, but to those walking beside her, what's your encouragement to them?
I think don't be afraid to ask about how they're doing, and don't be afraid to say that child's name. Because the biggest thing I think I found from talking to other moms too is, as time goes by, we feel that it's only us that say our kids' names or remember or think about our kids' names or our kids. And like it can make, even though it hurts, of course, because you miss them, especially as time goes on from like the date of when they passed. Like when someone tells me, oh my gosh, my kid told me, said something about Kai today, or what I thought about, I saw this today and I thought about Kai. Like it makes me so happy. Yeah. Because they are our kids. Just, you ask about anybody, if you know someone who has kids and you ask about their kids and how they're doing, even especially like if they are sick or they're, or they're struggling with behavioral issues or anything, like I think we all need support. Like every single one of us has some sort of challenge or hardship. I mean, this life isn't promised to be smooth sailing, we're promised struggle. And so each of us has that. And so just with any other struggle that, someone might go through, don't be afraid to ask that mom, hey, how are you doing today? I remember your child, or I thought about your child. And you know what? That mom might just say, thank you, and not be able to say more than that, or not be wanting to talk. And that's okay. Yeah. I will tell you that even if they don't say another word, the fact that you asked makes a huge difference. I mean, it's that whole aspect of community and support.
I've heard that. I've talked to a couple of people who have lost loved ones, whether that be a spouse or a child, and they've said the exact same thing that you said, is that they just want to feel as though other people remember them. And so when you ask about them or when you say something about them, it really brings joy to them. And so I love that encouragement. So there might be someone listening that is, at Dell Children's or whatever the local children's hospital might be, and they're walking through this. What's your encouragement for them?
That God won't fail. And it may not turn out how you hope it to be. I remember, every day we were just praying for that miracle, like, please let's get the MRI. And it's just this beautiful, clean picture of a beautiful spine, a beautiful brain, and, just believing. And then there comes a point where we had to realize this isn't going to happen. Of course, like anything could happen, but like in the world that we live in, we need to acknowledge, because of what we realized would be not much time left. And I remember my husband saying, we kept praying and praying for this miracle, and we realized we already had our miracle, and it was our son. And the true miracle that happened is that we know that Kai is healed. And so God didn't fail. And I remember my friend, when he was born, gave me this thing. It said, God keeps his promises. And I remember looking at it earlier in the journey with him when he got sick. And I was, in my head, to me, that was like miracle for healing. You just we're human. We want these things. And I remember seeing it afterwards, and I was like, yes, I know he kept his promise, because I know Kai is in heaven. And there's nothing I could have done better here on this earth, or that he would have enjoyed here better on this earth than that. Of course, I wish I could have had the opportunity to raise him. But it doesn't make those moments any less hard or less painful, but it can be the only, but it's what can sustain you, right? That God won't fail, even if this doesn't turn out how you hope it to be, or if it does turn out how you hope it to be, God's not failing.
That his promises are still true, no matter if your son, lives to be 80 or 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mother's Day is coming up, and is Mother's Day harder for you now? Or is it just another day?
Um, it, I think I have to admit it's harder. Um, I try to think about it honestly sometimes as just another day, but I also, when I thought about that, then I was like, well, wait, I have the honor and privilege to be Kai and Maya's mom. So I should, if anything, take this day to say thank you and just be grateful that I had that opportunity, even if it didn't turn out the way or look the way,
that you would have hoped.
Maybe I would have. Yeah, exactly. So it is hard, but I think, again, like with anyone, every day can be hard for someone for certain reasons. But I think particularly for those who have lost children, this can be particularly hard because you remember who you're a mom to and grieves that you can't celebrate maybe with them.
Yeah. Well, what is a misconception that people might have about a mom who has lost a child that you kind of would like to kind of debunk and say this is not really what you might think it is?
I think one is kind of what I was talking about earlier, is that like it would be terrible to say the kid's name. I think that's a big one. I think it's the complete opposite. And I think maybe the other thing is, and I don't want this to come across like, I don't know what's the right word. Like, oh, we should be pitied or something. I don't mean that, but I think like some people, and I haven't run into a lot of people like this, but I have heard other moms who they're told to just get over it. And I don't think in any loss, no one is ever going to get over a loss. And I think every type of loss is different, but I feel like, and again, this is where I'm not trying to say like, oh, I'm special, but there's something about losing a child where it's just a little different. And so with any loss, there's ups and downs, and there's these secondary losses, but like, there's milestones, but there's all these things you don't expect as well. Like, oh, my son should be starting kindergarten in the fall. And you see these other milestones that kids are going through. And so there are things that are just sharper. And so I think I've heard some moms say, people have felt like, okay, well, you had your grief. Now
it's been long enough, right?
Yeah, it's been long enough. And yes, you're going to be sad, but you shouldn't be as heartbroken as those things. But grief is this really, I mean, it's this tumultuous wave. And again, just like life, there's storms come and things just hurt a lot worse. And I think some people maybe after a couple of years, they either feel like they can't talk about it anymore, or they should be okay with it, where that's still their heart, and they're always going to carry that child with them.
Yeah. I think that's good for us that are listening to that have not walked through these shoes, is to also realize that, in the fall when Kai, that's his class that would be going to kindergarten, that affects you still. And it's not something that you just like it's not something you're not going to realize. I think with every year and every milestone, you're going to think about that. And it may not be something that you and Sean, your husband, ever, that grief, like you said, it's lifelong, Just the other day, Erin and I had the conversation, and we asked each other, what do you think would be harder, losing a spouse or a child? And we both said child. That's what we both answered. Yeah. Aki, I am so thankful that you came on, and I wish this wasn't just a mini interview. I wish this was a whole long hour interview. Because I know that what you've said, even in these past 15 minutes, is going to be encouraging to so many women, women that are walking through this road. These words will be in people's ears when this storm hits their life and they never knew it was coming. And so thank you for your encouragement, and thank you for being willing to talk about, just the hardest season that your family's been through.
Of course. Thank you again for having me.
You're welcome, and happy early Mother's Day as well.
Thanks,
to you. Thank you so much. Guys, I know that this show was a little bit different than the usual episode, but I really hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. There's so much value in all the perspectives presented today, and even that was just a snapshot of all the moms out there who work so hard every day. And regardless of what kind of relationship or connection you have to the word mom, I hope that you got something out of the show today. Being a mom is one of my greatest blessings, and I have a fabulous mom and mother-in-law, so I want to wish both of them a happy Mother's Day. Mom, I love you. Happy Mother's Day. Nancy, I love you. Happy Mother's Day. Guys, I also want to share one more thing before we go. You know I love stories. We just listened to 4 women's stories, and I wish I could have talked to Aki for an hour and a half listening to her story about the journey that they went through. I love stories, and I want to tell you about my friends over at the Austin Stone Story Team. Story Team is a community of artists who tell honest and encouraging stories of lives transformed by the gospel, which lead you then to worship Jesus for who he is and remember what he has done. These guys of the Story Team have just launched a new project called the Story Team Weekly Podcast. And I'm a fan because I love podcasts and I love stories. So at the Story Team Weekly Podcast, you can listen to a new audio story of a gospel transformation every single week. I was actually honored to work with some of the Story Team narrators to record a few stories that will be featured in future episodes of the podcast. I've been personally impacted by these stories, and I know that you will too. So I'm encouraging you to go subscribe to the Story Team Weekly Podcast. Find them on iTunes. You're going to love these stories, and you might just hear a familiar voice while you're over there. But guys, thanks for listening to the show today. I hope that you enjoyed meeting my friends, Wynn and Diane and Aki and Alicia and their stories. And anything we talked about is going to be over in the show notes, jamieivey.com. Guys, I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you have a great week. Enjoy your girlfriends and enjoy a happy hour. I will see you next week with my friend Amy from the Bobby Bones Show. See you guys next week.